guess I wanted to start off by noting that you just kind of arrived, maybe about a year ago. You just arrived in South Carolina.
About 4 months ago.
Oh, wow!
July 1st. Yeah.
Wow. And you're the director of the University of South Carolina School of Library and Information Science.
That's exactly right.
How's it going so far?
It's great. It's on all fronts. The school is fantastic. I have a great faculty, and they're ready to move ahead, and great staff. Amazing alumni, and really enjoying the whole South Carolina experience as well. So it's kind of nice to be able to eat in your shorts in October outside. So.
Any surprises?
Any surprises? Well, you always have the surprises, of course, when you're applying for a job, and then briefly after you've taken it, you turn it into this nice utopian experience. And when you get here, you're like, oh, I guess I have to deal with that. Oh, I've got to deal with that. But all good stuff. And the hurricanes were a bit of a surprise, but other than that.
Yeah, that was a surprise for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Well, they might be coming back around again next season, so maybe it won't be such a surprise moving forward. But I'm interested in how your new position differs from your prior position as Dean Scholar for New Librarianship at Syracuse University's School of Information Studies.
Sure. At Syracuse, I was a professor, and Dean Scholar was just a designation that I was an advisor to the dean on librarianship and such. And so it was pretty straight faculty role, teaching, research, these kinds of things. And in my new role, it's more administrative. So I'm a professor, but as the director of the program, I'm in charge of personnel, I'm in charge of management and budget, those kinds of things. So now I have responsibility as well as, just being able to sit back and think big thoughts.
Okay.
Yesterday, you presented on what you called the Knowledge School. I'd like to know what is the Knowledge School. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, my dean, this is to be the not screwing up part. The School of Library and Information Science is part of the College of Information and Communications. And my dean jokes that, in fact, we're trying to own the middle of the alphabet between L schools and J schools and L schools and K schools and I schools. But it comes from the idea that I see an evolution from library schools, which were focused primarily on institutions and what it took to staff and man those institutions, to an increased awareness of information within libraries and outside of that context. And I think that we're ready for the next push ahead, which is past the idea that information is some sort of strategic asset or bit of magic that we can pass through a network and technology, and really talk about now what impact are we trying to have, whether that's in a library, whether that's in an organization, a publisher, what have you. And when I think impact, I think knowledge. Not recorded knowledge, materials and things, but how people see the world and understand the world. For me, the goal of library science education, information, professional education, is to help decisions make better decisions. We want to make our community smarter, whether that community is a business or whether that community is a university or locality. And so that really is what people know. We understand that we can send a lot of information at people, around people, collect it, but what they absorb, what they make sense of, how they come to understand their truth and their world, that's where I think the next phase is, which is really about impact. And so the concept of the Knowledge School is to say, what's the next step in evolution? We've done really well with libraries as that information domain has gotten larger with more and more players, where every organization, every discipline is an information discipline. I think we can really focus now on how people utilize information, utilize resources to make a difference, to make better decisions. And so the focus there is on good academia, good research, but impact and service and making it work.
Sounds like it. I think Jim Neal mentioned the notion of servicing information.
Yeah, I'll be honest, as someone with a PhD in information and teaches library and information science, I'm not even quite sure what information is. And so I get, there's lots of formulations. Smarter people than I have tried to do this, from Michael Buckland and John Budd and others. For me, what it comes down to is I want to service people and communities. And when I look at how there are lots of people who want to improve communities. Police want to improve communities. Lawyers want to improve communities. Nursing wants to improve communities. The angle that I think is really important and central to library and information science is knowledge, is how do we learn? Yes, formal settings for education, but how do we learn as a retiree? How do we learn as a CIO? How do we learn as a community member? And so That's the contribution I want to make. I don't think we're servicing information. I think we're servicing our communities and our public.
And when you talk about impact, I'm wondering if there's an element of activism
Oh,
underlying this.
It's not. It's right in front and center.
Okay.
It's not a hidden agenda at all. Activism, advocacy, messaging. It comes down to the fact that we need to make a difference. Right? If you think about for a moment, whether you're an academic library that's taking in a bunch of tuition dollars and overhead funding, whether you're a public library bringing in tax dollars or a school library bringing tax dollars, we affect the communities we're in. Simply having a library is an effect. It takes resources, it takes space, etc. That comes to with my way of thinking as a responsibility. If we're going to impact our society, we better work really hard to make sure we have a positive impact. That means we have to have a sense of what positive means. The concept of being objective or being neutral or being somehow not connected in is, I think, one, a fiction generally, but two, does a disservice. If we believe that reading is important to third graders, that's a point of view, and we need to advocate for that. Whether you do it in read posters or whether you do it through story time and things that really feel nice and comfortable, or whether you do it as the faculty at South Carolina have done by marching down with teachers and children, educators to the State House and say we need to fund literacy education. Advocacy is central to what we do. We advocate on the behalf of our communities. Our communities need access to resources. Our communities need more funding. Our communities need better decision making, et cetera. That advocacy is there. Now, that's different than ideology. That's different than saying all librarians should be conservative Republicans. But we have a suite of things that we feel are important around intellectual property, intellectual honesty, privacy, literacy, and we need to be a societal voice that has an impact and advocates for that at all levels.
Do you think that this shift or evolution of focusing on societal impact and focusing on advocacy is going to make information studies or library and information studies more attractive to a new crop of students?
I do. What we're seeing is a couple of things, sort of looking at general trends around library science education. The first is that we're seeing a younger and younger demographic come in, right? The now by data outdated stereotype of someone coming in for a second career. Someone said, oh, well, I was a great advertising exec banker and I decided to slow down and read a lot. And then they come to library school and they realize, oh, that was a bad assumption. But even that metaphor of going in as a second profession, we're seeing fewer and fewer. We're seeing more and more folks coming right from undergraduate degrees. So the average starting age is under 30 now. And we get a lot of people directly from undergraduates. And when you look at the profile and you ask them why, one, they love technology. They love technology. They're technologically literate. They love humanities. They love the advocacy portion. But the service thing is what brings them into the field. And what I think part of that knowledge school idea is what information schools have done really well is say, these skills, these principles, these values are important to industry. With knowledge, we can say these skills, these are important to industry, sure, but libraries and not-for-profits and governments and et cetera. And so yes, that advocacy is, people want to make a difference. It's the same reason they become nurses and social work and lawyers and doctors. It's the drive to improve our society, to be advocates for their communities.
Speaking of students, what experience should a student expect when they enroll in the Knowledge School?
I think that the couple of things. One, they should understand that they are coming on not as a consumer of a program or a customer of the program or a user of the program. They are coming to join and be part of the program. I think higher education does itself a great disservice when we view our students and as customers. The reason being, if you think about it, the day after you graduate, whether it's an undergraduate degree, a doctorate degree, or a master's degree, you are just about completely dependent on the reputation of the institution that gave you that degree. Right? If you come from some place that people highly respect, you get a good job. If you come from some place not so much, it's going to be harder. 10 years and 20 years out, the reputation of that institution is almost completely dependent on you, what you did. So that important, delicate, and complex interweaving of responsibility, of ownership, that's one. It also means in the classroom. We've long ago given up the idea that the professor at the head of a classroom of library science, or frankly, engineering, knows everything about that topic. We know that innovation comes from the Charleston Conference. We know that innovation is happening in these hallways. And so students are coming in, and they are coming in well informed so they can teach the professors. And the professors and students will be learning at the same time, working with alumni. It's a much more complex relationship. So the big thing is to see a knowledge school is a community of people seeking to improve society together. And that means that the status begins to break down. That means the traditional models of 3-credit semester-long things begin to break down. And it becomes much more like we're talking about libraries becoming a hub and a platform for ideas to flow around and move together. And so that sounds very abstract, but it turns into things like internships and practica within courses. It turns into different ways of delivering instruction. It turns into looking at online instruction, not as a convenience, but as a way of increasing diversity of viewpoints and ideas within the classroom. It comes into better relationships and partnerships with libraries and industry and bringing those things about. So it's much more what a student should expect in a knowledge school, frankly what a student should expect in any good program, is to be welcomed as a co-owner of that school and a member of that school.
It also seems that the knowledge school would prepare people for professions above and beyond traditional librarianship.
Absolutely.
What type of professions would you be looking at? And following up on that, does it mean that the word or the profession of librarianship is passé?
So don't let me forget that second part, because that could be fun. But the first part is, I always give the analogy, because I love, the standard complaint was, oh, we're the only profession that's named after a building. And I said, that's actually not true. If you were an accountant, you used to work in counting houses. I mean, I know it's not quite Christmas time, but our Scrooge is going to come up, and Bob Marley's going to come up, and they were working in counting houses. They were accountants because they counted things. And it used to be that businesses brought all their records and materials to a place to happen. That profession, the businesses began to realize, we need this in our own place. We need better access to it. We need them to worry about our goals, et cetera. And so accounting grew in reputation, in support and finance in places that happen. And I can see that happening in librarianship. We already see it. We have students that do internships at Google. We have students that do internships in all sorts of places. Even look at this conference. If you look at the number of library science and you ask what institutions they're affiliated with, you're probably going to find University of and Library of and Springer and Elsevier, and we have that. And the idea of expanding it even further is important. So one, yes, what we're going to see is that happening at the undergraduate level with information science, but at the master's level and the PhD level. And we're already seeing it. Now, you asked the question about the word, and I work at a school of library and information science. And I have to say, the first question I got when I showed up was, all right, so what are we changing the name of the school to? And I said, no! I love the name of the school. Don't touch it. Apple, Google, Microsoft, Target, all these people would love to have the brand of library. Even if people say, oh, you're obsolete and you're out of date, they even say it out of a sense of love. We have a cachet with that term. People recognize it and they understand it. I have a bachelor's degree in information science. My hardest thing is to convince an 18-year-old to get that degree, because they're like, well, what job do I get? I say, well, you'll be an information scientist. And all they can think is, does that mean I get a lab coat? If I say you're going to be a librarian, they're like, oh, they got it. Right. And so absolutely we should not give up on that terminology. It is not a sense of baggage. It is one that we have invested a great deal of time in improving that reputation. And so it's central and crucial to what we do.
Coming back to the knowledge school, so yes, it sounds pretty abstract, but it sounds really exciting. And I'm actually kind of jealous. I would have loved something like that, right? So I'd love to know more about how would you describe the curriculum there? So the curriculum,
a couple of things have to happen. One, what you seek to do is move from a school as an administrative unit. Why are we all sitting in the same room? Why are you working in school libraries and you're working in academic libraries and I'm over doing data mining, right? That's a school. It's just an administrative shell. We need to move from a school to a school of thought. What that means is, I know why you're fitting together. I know why you're there, because we're seeking to help communities make better decisions. We do that through technology. That involves data. That involves education and literacy. And suddenly we all have a shared understanding of what we're trying to do. That's a really concrete thing to happen. And that is preparing not only librarians, but it's preparing people at the bachelor's level, because we need to prepare the mayors, the provosts, the CIOs, the future board members to support librarians and libraries as well. The curriculum then, we need to, once again, I think we sort of alluded somewhat to this, but it's not, this is cataloging, boom, because it's a known entity and you read the book and you get it. And this is reference and we're going to stack this on top and stack this on top. It's much more integrative. So every course should not only have that sort of symposium sense, this is the field and what goes, but a piece of practice. So one thought, and we're just getting, I have 4 months, give me another 4. What we're already starting to talk about, what if you took, let's pick reference. You take the reference course, and yes, there are things you need to know about question negotiation, resources, et cetera. 2 weeks, somewhere in there, you're actually going to go and answer reference questions. And since you're interested in music librarianship, we have a relationship, go into the music library. If you're interested in history, here's a great place for history. If you're interested in engineering, and then come back and let's share what we learned. And now we teach you, now it's time for information organization, cataloging, metadata. 2 weeks, somewhere in there, you're going to be describing and working on metadata schemas and working on digital library in, once again, you like music, in a music context. By the time you're done, you have a lot of what we know librarians need to know around information organization, community outreach, and access technology. But you already have a great amount of experience in a given area that you can then take forward. And everyone else has benefited from real practice and talking about, so then the professor says, well, on page 38 it says, and they say, not so much in music. You know, it changes that conversation. So the curriculum is not so much, yes, we need to talk about what's core. We need more instruction. We need more community outreach and communication skills and what is facilitation. But it really is a matter of how it's delivered. And the delivery involves the precious new ideas. And those come not only from the faculty member, but from the alumni and the practice experience as well. And constantly coming and having that conversation. You know, I think there's some fear as ALA has changed its accreditation standards. And when it did that, it changed in the 90s from, you know, you must have so many faculty must be on your staff with library science. We understood at the time. I'm much more worried that if I have X percentage of people with library science, they're going to bank on those skills for a 20-year career. That scares me much more than have they ever worked in a library. I'm much more interested in someone without a library science degree who spends a lot of time worrying about, thinking about, working with, understanding, and building library services today. And so that means the students and the faculty and the alumni and the staff all are around that idea of learning. And whether you work in a library or you're coming back and going, oh, did you know that's the same thing in Google? Did you know that's the same thing in IBM or et cetera? That's the kind of conversation. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is the school is a conversation about what's going on, where are we going, how do we get there.